The following podcast is sponsored by Basico. At Basico, we understand your needs and pain points. Our expertise in CFO services, legal, finance IT, and people and payroll helps drive your business forward by inspiring change and challenging norms. We believe in deep explorative discussions and critical angles, the same spirit that fuels the Only Constant podcast hosted by our own Lasse Rindom. Discover more about Basico's vision and services at basico.dk. And if you like what you hear in this episode, please don't hesitate to share it with a friend. And now Lasse, take it away.
You are listening to The Only Constant, a podcast where we go beyond the usual discussions in technology and business and aim to explore more than explain. Join me for engaging discussions with a diverse range of global thought leaders as we seek to uncover new perspectives and insights in a free-flowing conversation. My guest today is Emilie Lundblad, and I am your host, Lasse Rindom. Hi Emilie, and welcome to The Only Constant. I'm very happy that you're here with me today for this episode of The Only Constant. And we've been talking about this for some months actually to do this. So I'm just super thrilled that we finally got around to do this today. So welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm thrilled to be here.
Emilie, you're a serial Microsoft AI most valuable professional, right?
That's correct, yeah.
And you have tons of other great accolades as well. People, can look that up if they want to. We will not introduce it here. But what makes a professional really valuable in the Gen AI age?
So I'm going to explain also the MVP because I get asked it so much. And when Microsoft picked out the most valuable professionals, they look at whether or not you've been contributing. You can contribute it either to their product, you can contribute to open source code, you can also be contributing by answering questions for the community. You can also do it by writing articles or being out speaking. You'll see that I'm out speaking and doing quite a lot of demos. So that's how they perceive it. They look then at everything that you've done in the past year, and then their professional technical people in the product teams go in and they review your work, and that's how you get your stamp of approval as somebody who really knows your field. But I don't think that that's necessarily what makes you a valuable professional in these times. I believe that people who have a engineering mindset, who are curious and who are good at being innovative are the ones who are the most valuable. The ones who look at technology and quickly adapts to it and can see how this can be used to change the way we work, the way we live, those are the most valuable. Because if you just look at something like vibe coding, I've become a bit obsessed or at least very fascinated by it lately. Look at how many different tools people have been working with in the last year. Yes, of course, you can work with your GitHub Copilot, but you might as well be working with Lovable. You might be working with Cursor. You might be working with many other tools. You could also just be going with Claude. Nevertheless, so many people have adapted to these tools in a very short amount of time and actually been able to create both fast APIs, websites, applications. A few days ago for me, it was rolling out an entire stack of tools on Azure and actually loading the code onto it and seeing that it was working with MCP service. And for me, that really highlights that it's not about a specific tool stack. It's not about a specific kind of education. You don't have to be an engineer or PhD or work as a data scientist. But if you have the understanding how technical components can actually work together, how they integrate, and what is possible with new technology, you can create an immense amount of value in a very, very short time. So those are the most valuable professionals. Now, of course, those people who have a lot of experience because they've been doing architecture, whether in data or in AI, they have a foot up. So goes it for the senior developers. They work with so many different systems, so they have this system engineering thinking, and therefore they, in this time and age, can use AI to become they can increase their velocity to create an incredible amount of not just code, but actually applications that are valuable. Whereas the juniors may not have that overview and insights. They don't have necessarily as great a systems engineering thinking. They might not understand the full architecture or the dependencies and the implications of this, but they can learn it. And they can learn it really fast if they are passionate and willing to learn and adapt. So I think the people who are valuable are those who just naturally have that engineering mindset and the passion and the grit to learn and adapt.
There's a lot of people have been saying in the market as well, right? That because I agree with you. I think maybe my consideration is, most valuable is always difficult because we are all there's a connection of everyone's. We're all valuable. That sounds terrible. That means no one is. But my point here is that we've always had. Can
I just hook on to that, because I really want to say that it's true. Recently, I had to hire people for my team, and I was reading through all of these CVs, and they were amazing CVs. And every time I was thinking, that person would have been so amazing when I worked with WPP. Oh, this person would have been amazing when I was working with MS Nextbridge. This person would have been amazing over here at this job. And so there is a truth to the most valuable depends on the context. Yeah. And people should never forget that also when they're applying for jobs, that you can be a superstar, but maybe just not in that context.
But there's a double thing. The one I wanted to get was that there's this. I actually want to say two things, right? Because one thing is that a really good engineer becomes. Usually we say the team is what's the MVP or the most valuable thing, right? But right now you can actually become 10x more exponentially more efficient.
Absolutely.
As if you're a top expert that goes across so many domains in technology. But that also leads me to the domain expert, right? So we in the end, that what has always been the bottleneck for all IT development is requirements, right? Getting the right requirements and making sure the customer actually knows how to communicate what they want. Isn't that?
I think you're hitting something very important and crucial. And it's not just about the requirements, it's about the clarity of mindset to know exactly what you want and where you want to go. And often when we talk about what is a good prompt is clear on its goal. And it helps us gain greater clarity on exactly what we want. And so that is something that AI is really well suited for helping us with, to increase our perspective and clarity on what we want. And so obviously for that reason, I have built agents that help people in the business write their requirements, because they have such a hard time formulating it. But often asking the right questions gets you half the way to the right answer and the solution. And so if you have a whole set of prompts for critical thinking that you ask people to write the requirements, you get very far quite fast. But of course, if you don't know if you want to go to Barbados or, well, let's say Antarctica, it's tough. So at least you have to have some sort of mental idea and clarity on what it is you want to achieve. And those who have that will get further with AI. Faster.
But let's just, I'm just thinking right now, okay, but sometimes I think things and sometimes it is not smart things that I'm thinking. But what I'm thinking right now is that, you have this senior professional in IT or in architecture who actually knows everything and becomes even more efficient and even more deep on that and more important. And that person sort of has to still bridge into some kind of domain expert who has to be equally deep. So are we not just, because we are putting it, my mind picture right now is that previously we might have had bigger teams that can now be handled by fewer people, right? But these bigger teams would also have a larger attention span to some extent, all these different people, right? But now it's one person in IT maybe doing a big project and one person in the business. So are we losing something, do you think, in the granularity that a team is granular, right? In a higher degree than a super efficient one person.
So
not you necessarily. I know you can grasp anything in the whole world.
I wouldn't want to say that. No, I cannot. And the only
She's
way...
chuckling right now while we're speaking.
Yeah, but the only way I can do it is, of course, to have agents that can play the different roles for me to give those perspectives. Because the beauty of a team is not just that they have different capabilities. It is also that they give each other perspectives and they learn from each other. And then, of course, there is the dynamics of the energy that plays together. But you can create teams of agents that gives perspectives and work together. It just requires strong guardrails and...
You said just?
Well, yeah, it's not just. I mean, they can continue to talk for a very long time. They are stochastic parrots, so of course, if you don't have very clear boundaries, then it will keep going.
Is, what is the problem here? What could be the problem? We're getting all more efficient in all of our boxes, right? But I've said before, right, that Emilie gets more efficient doesn't necessarily mean that she gets more aligned. Do you see that?
Yes, I think that hits really hits it on the head of the nail. Because what I see in companies is that we can add all of this AI that makes us far more efficient, that increases our velocity, and we can create the applications far faster. But it doesn't help the alignment within the company. So when in the company, if there are still misalignment and governance structures and processes that does not function well together, what you get is more friction when you're adding AI. And this is something that we need to.
Because the surface just gets bigger, right? So
it goes faster. You have 100,000 processes. They are not aligned. Every time that some of them touches each other, either there is a bug or something fails. Now, if I put that to a 10x speed, you'll see that with much more clarity. It will really light up with red. And that's in essence what is happening. But you also see that when you take processes that has been held by people before and we're now automating it, then their way of thinking, their way of working will have more friction when I give them more speed due to working with AI. Does that make sense?
It makes complete sense.
So you do see more friction, and to some extent that means that people
more pull requests, more change requests.
But also it's not a bug when you're having a fight with a colleague, but in essence, if both colleagues got 10x powers to do what they want, but they don't want to do the same thing, so they're not going in the same direction, then their friction will increase 10x.
Do we even have a company?
You will have challenges.
Yeah.
For sure.
So what? And before we just move on from this MVP thing, what makes Emilie an MVP?
I think it's curiosity. So it's my inner nerd and my inner want to keep learning new things and figure out what I can do with them, and always considering, oh wow, that's a really interesting paper, that's a really interesting thought, that's a very interesting technology. How can we apply it? How can I use it? I think that's the essence of what makes me an MVP.
That sounds very neat and all that, right? But when I talked to you last time, you were also listing of all the things you do in a day, right?
Yeah.
And all the things you have to manage and can manage.
Yep.
So it's not just you're just not just the vibe coder. You're also the deployment. You're also the training.
People
you're also the
forget that I come from a background where originally I worked in startups and I've been an entrepreneur and set up everything from events to online platforms for more than 30,000 products around the world, and then to learning much more about how do you actually code, how do you build databases, how do you build integrations, how do you do BI reporting, and then going and studying stochastic calculus and econometrics and becoming a candidate in, my specialty is econometrics for finance, which is the foundations for machine learning. And then from there going out into the world and working as a consultant, where the first I did was financial reporting, financial databases, and then it worked into being forecasting and things that was more related to analytics. And then from there, I went on to study machine learning and AI at MIT, and I got to work with NLP projects, both for HR, but especially for marketing. And then it went on from there to being more into machine learning and data science, and how do you also structure the data so you can work with it for data science? How do you architect these solutions? How do you project manage these kind of solutions, gather the requirements, do the stakeholder management, doing the security and the governance for many global companies when it came to their data, but just as much their data science. Learning also to work with data strategies. So I do a very wide range of tasks.
And you still do all of those things?
I still do all those things. So in one day, I will both be talking about how do we do good AI governance, how do we work with AI strategy, how do I architect the solution for a agent or rack chat, how do I help people gather the requirements efficiently, how do I build a process around it so everybody can build that into business cases, how do I communicate the needs to our management so that they understand what does it actually take, how do we formulate the capabilities and build a roadmap to take a company from not having worked much with AI to actually becoming mature in this area?
Instructor also.
I'm also a yoga instructor, and then I vibe coach, and so
participate in a couple of really big boards, and
also yes,
yeah, okay. Yeah. So you're the perfect example of someone who will get 10x by using AI, because you know what good is, how it looks, and you're able to be critical. You're an expert in so many different fields. But how do you get from
I always feel like I can get better, and I see so many people out there that I admire. Andrew Kirkpatrick could be one that I think are amazing and are being light years ahead of us. And if you keep looking on to these people, you keep improving, you keep learning, because there's so much you can do better.
Yeah. But my point is just that if you can get, because you understand, this is not just things you have in your box, right? These are things that are connected. And you also said that they move from one to the other, so they're all interconnected.
Yeah.
And that also means that when I 10x you with an AI chat, I 10x those connections as well. So whenever you write some code, you'll understand how that code would affect security, how it would move in this and that direction, training and people using it. You see all of these things because you've been there.
Right. Sometimes I do need to do one task, sit on another chair, and then review it from a different perspective. I might have to sort of shape shift in my own little brain.
But how do you do that? How do you give this to? How do we get juniors to get there if they are now making shortcuts and making AI do all those things that you have a baseline for understanding? I
would say prescribing, but of course I would like to recommend doing learning paths. You can do many different ones. I think doing the Microsoft Learning Path is a great way to get the foundations of what you would otherwise have learned if you'd studied computer science. I didn't study computer science, and I know for certain that if I had not done that many learning paths and certifications, I wouldn't have had that foundation to stand on. It's also sometimes easier to start with one tech stack and then expand onto other tech stacks. Then you see their similarities.
Okay, let's answer this. Sorry, I'm interrupting you. Because I've been asking other people about this, and now I want to ask you, because now I feel like you're almost concluding what I'm saying in other episodes. Is that when we have AI now that can help us do so many things, right? We will, as we've done with all the other industrial revolutions or changes and efficiencies, we've increased education time.
Yes.
Are we doing that again?
I recently read about one of the great startups, I believe it's Palantir in the US, who said there isn't actually much value in what people learn in university. And so instead we're going to take high school graduates and we're going to start training them on different technical skills. And to me that made perfect sense. I believe that universities need to adapt closer to the reality of how to create value in companies than they are today. And so, yes, I want to increase people's learning, but I want to do it either while they're working or change the way we do university degrees. University degrees are created in a way where you had to recall and you had to learn critical thinking. Learning critical thinking is still crucial. Nevertheless, when I've learned to do...
Isn't it even more crucial than usual, actually, some would say?
Yes, but you have to apply it in completely different ways.
And also understand what you've been critical about. Exactly what you're saying. Yes.
So, you've studied a lot of philosophy, and the beauty of those who have studied a lot of philosophy is you have understood that you can see the world from many different perspectives, and the world almost changes in color and values when you choose different perspectives. And LLM is trained on all the knowledge that we have available on the internet, which means that it can take any of those positions. It doesn't have one opinion, it doesn't have specific ethics. Yes, it has biases towards the Western world, no doubt about it, because that's where we got most of the data from. But when you interact with it, you have to remember that you're giving it that perspective. And if you're not clear in how do we see the world, what's our values, how do we want to work, it can take on... it can be as terrible and as good as the randomness will allow that day or its guardrails. So if you're not critical about the output that you're giving and you're not asking, I'm using prompts to do critical thinking, then you will have a challenge. There's been a recent Harvard study where they're looking into the ability of learning and thinking for young individuals who are using LLMs a lot for learning, but also for solving their task at university. And those who just use the LLM to solve the tasks without any critical thinking actually become poorer in their ability to do critical thinking
Yes.
and learn new skills. Whereas those who use the LLM to challenge the way they see the world and the way that they answer a question, they strengthen their mind and their clarity of mind.
Don't rewrite comment instead, or criticize me, or something like that, or give me another perspective. But the rewrite thing is a terrible lazy trap, or what you
that
call
one
it,
I would
know.
never use. I have this one that I teach people, which is you are a critical reviewer. You're now going to use critical thinking, and there is a list of questions it has to ask. You know, how can this be improved? Give me 3 other perspectives. What can improve the quality? And now, after having gone through all of this, then give me an improved answer back. So using the critical
Perhaps,
reviewer,
even sometimes maybe not even that, right? But yeah, I get your point.
but that can strengthen
Yeah.
how we learn, how we see the world. But so the young people, if they get into business and they learn at the same time, I think that will give them the greatest strength, because we're in a world that's changing so much and so fast that we cannot rely on what we learned at university. We have to be continually learning.
But if we change the university setup, so we can say that. Let's say we change it, but in 10 years or 5 years, if we just need more seniors, right? We just need seniors. Will we then just add? That's what my point, right? Just say you're now trainee for 8 years before, because you see there's already these weird things happening. There's been some signs, at least, that people are hiring less juniors, but there's more demand for seniors. So completely underscores what we're talking about here as well, right? And
So-
if that happens, we need the juniors to become seniors. So will that just mean we'll have to make room for longer education periods where we say it's okay, you're not super skilled yet, even more than we already do? You get my point? If you look at it historically, there's been, when you're
get your
17, 200 years ago, you were a full-grown adult, you could do everything on the field, right?
Yeah.
Then tractor, or you have to learn how to drive the tractor before you get productive. Okay, it's on 21. And so it moved on like that, kept on later before you participate. Is that happening? It's a big pattern, I know.
So there is the challenge that, of course, today there are a very limited amount of people who's worked for 15 years or 10 years just with AI and ML.
Yeah.
It's like a pyramid. And there are far more young individuals coming out into the working market, either with such an education or who wants to work within this field. So we can never do this one-to-one senior to juniors. And can we then turn juniors into seniors? I think the crucial thing that we all need to work on learning is what I'm doing creating value? Do I have enough critical thinking to understand that what I'm doing right now is value creating for what I've been asked to do right here? I think you learn that faster out on the job than you necessarily do in university. We're seeing several countries who are proposing, hey, how about people just get a bachelor and then they go out and work and then they can do a part-time master later on. I don't think that's necessarily a bad idea, but it wouldn't make somebody into an AI senior.
But you meet if you're if you're like 10 times more valuable than junior, I would not hire the junior. I'd try to hire Emilie. That's my point. You're saying they should go out and get a job. Yes, but what if the signs are right now that no one is requesting juniors?
So I think we're lucky in Denmark because we have a system where you often both study and then you work part-time. And there is no doubt that the people who have been working part-time and learned
much better equipped,
are much better equipped and creating a lot more value. I think going down that road is probably something that we could study in Denmark and do even more of. That being said, have I had juniors in the past who went to a senior within 2 years? I have. I can remember them. There has been Alexander, there's been a Damien, there has been an Adam. There was young individuals that I could take from a complete junior to almost a senior level. I could ask them to be an architect within a very short frame of time. How did I do that? I was very clear on what do you want to achieve? Okay. And then how do we reverse engineer that into a learning path and certifications that gives you all of that? So that you have a clear mental map of all the tools that you need in your box to actually solve those problems.
So you gave them 2 years of education.
They put in the extra time themselves. So
I'm pushing here, I know.
No, it's always a give and take on both parties. They wanted to achieve it. I would try harder than to give them tasks that align to the goals, but they would probably also put in some of their own time to achieve that learning. Otherwise, it wasn't possible.
There's no doubt, getting access to sit with someone like you and learn from someone like you, is immensely valuable right now. But that's also the strain.
And also very overwhelming.
Yeah.
Because I always believe I can get better. I'm never satisfied with where I'm at. And for some people, working with someone like me is unsatisfying because it will not feel I will not make you feel like you're good enough. It's not my intention. I really want to applaud every step ahead you make and all the good things you do. I do, and I do my best for it. But just because I treat myself that way, that will sometimes rub off on the people around me.
You're doing your best right now to make me feel like I'm asking good enough questions.
I think you're doing a marvelous job. Absolutely. It's very inspiring, and I've loved listening to the other podcasts already.
Thank you. Emilie, I want to move into another area as well here right now. So what in your opinion and with your background constitutes a good AI strategy right now? And not rhetorical question, because I genuinely mean this, is do we need an AI strategy?
I believe we do. And I think we should also go back and look at, who is the people who wrote about strategy. They were military strategists. It's Lasse from China. There are many of the great thinkers. Now, first of all, when they made a strategy, they probably had an army in place already, which means that they had a plan for what those people were supposed to go out and do. The trouble today is that we have lots of companies that decide, I'm going to sprinkle a little bit of AI on our company because it will make it more valuable, only they might not have any AI teams. They might not even have a cloud infrastructure team. And those are some of the requirements.
Where's our data? Oh, sorry.
Yeah. Do we need data quality? Oh, really? No, jokes aside.
It's not a joke.
It happens. But you have to have the right people and skills in place in order to actually execute. And so when you start writing an AI strategy, you need to make sure that you have not just aligned it to your overall business strategy and your overall business objectives, but you've also done the assessments on where are we today on both our digital maturity journey, but also our cloud maturity journey. And Microsoft has a framework called AI adoption plan. You can find it online. It doesn't matter if you work with Microsoft or not. I would highly recommend going and having a look at it because it asks you all the critical questions that you need to review to figure out both how ambitious are you in what you want to do with AI. Do you want to go out and be the new OpenAI, or do you just want to improve your products in some extent with AI, whether or not you're SAP or this could be Salesforce and their Agentforce. That's fairly ambitious. And then you need to assess what people do I have, what data do I have, where are we, and what will it require to take us to the next maturity level that I would like to go to. And from there you can start figuring out what you need to get in place, how you will manage it, how you will govern it, and how you will secure it, because all of that is part of a successful AI strategy. Whereas if you just have a beautiful slide deck and PowerPoint, that's not going to help you much, because when you're out there, if your army is not out on the playing field and they don't have the right equipment or they showed up at the wrong place at the right time, there was no point in having a strategy on how to win. You're not going to win without having the right capabilities in place. And that's where most companies currently are hitting a miss on their AI strategies.
It's the you and whose army, right? As people say, right? So
what we see a lot is that they hire in external consultants to do most of the work. Now, that's a good strategy for getting started because they can help you avoid some of the roadblocks, some of the bugs, some of the issues that you might hit.
Right? You can, like for an army picture.
Great mercenaries, but they're not loyal to you, and the knowledge that they have will not stay within your company, so it won't get integrated. And so the moment they leave, things might stop running or working, and that's a problem. So you need to have this dual approach where your AI strategy is not just a strategy, it also has tactics in for how we're actually going to implement this on a day-to-day basis, so we as a company have the capabilities.
So I think we've been sometimes when because I've been saying this as well, you need to make sure you have your cloud in place, you need to update your apps, you need to get your data and all these things, but I feel like we've said that for 15 years or something like that, most of it, right? And still companies have been underinvesting in it. And has that been because the end goal was not attractive enough? Is AI an attractive enough end goal for companies to take this seriously and actually invest in this?
If you haven't made it completely clear how the company is going to earn more money or save money from using AI, then no. If you don't hook into the core value stream in the company...
So AI is not just, we can get AI, that's not enough.
That will never be enough. It wouldn't make any sense either if I was running a business.
Good.
I have, a core value stream and it has to contribute to that. And the trouble sometimes is that the people who are working with the core value stream do not understand how technology can come in and help them or leverage the playing field. And so when that is not...
Back to requirements and
yeah, but also there has to be enough conversation for them to have a mental map of how can this technology actually go in and make a change for me in my company.
And that's why I need to do the cloud stuff, and that's why I need to...
Yes, and connect all of those dots, which can sometimes be a challenge.
Because I've seen, and I've said this also earlier on the podcast, that I've been helping with some master theses also at CBS and universities. And there's a tendency for people to say we need to make an AI framework. And then what do? They put AI at the center. And I always say, let's put value there, just for fun. Mm. And then put AI as a background to, or how can it, we need, I think the mental map that people have right now, and the way people are looking at this, like they're looking at AI, they're going to AI conferences. I'd love to, and I know my title also is AI Lead. I have a podcast running on speaking about AI, but I'd actually love to stop talking about AI. It sounds weird, but I really mean it. I'd love to speak about problems. I like to speak problems. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's. I don't want to sell you AI. I want to sell you your problems. That's it.
But I think that we're going closer towards that future, and we look at somebody like Andrej Karpathy, who's saying, it's going to become our new operating systems. You take LLM, you take internet, you take data, you combine it, you have agents, and they're just going to be running in the background and become our operating system. I think that's the future we're going to come closer to, but that is a future for the digitally mature companies and not for those who doesn't even have their data in the cloud yet, because then internet is not going to connect to their data. Exactly. Fun fact. So I think we need people who think about how can we solve problems. That's absolutely right. How can we create value? But you also have to be able to understand how AI can support it. But I suppose in some ways, OpenAI is a really good example of the best and the worst. The best is the UX that got everybody to interact with AI and so started a hype wave. And the worst is that they still haven't found a way to earn money.
No, yeah.
And so now they're hiring in people trying to understand how they work, junior bankers, in order to show that AI can solve the problem. And isn't it intriguing that after more than 3-4 years, they still haven't solved that part of the equation?
Now you had Anthropic come out with MCPs, right, earlier this year, which is super helpful. And you had OpenAI allude to ads and erotic content. I just think, that's what I'm going to say about that.
Yeah.
But one of them is very productive. One of them seems to be having...
deviating.
A revenue problem.
That seems to be more of it. Whereas I'm fascinated both by the articles that come out from Anthropic and the way they think about models and frameworks and, MCP. It took me a little while to see how brilliant it is, but what a difference that makes.
But they also believe in scaffolding a lot more than OpenAI does, right? And I think the problem is that some people I know you're getting one of my key thoughts. Some people think that data is at large. If you have enough data, you have an ambiguity, and you can always make the right decision at any time. I believe that is impossible, right? So I think that the AI agents will always at some point need to be scaffolded with something and be controlled, and I might earlier have thought that we are changing the perspective from having humans at the center and technology at the edge to having technology at the center and humans as an edge functionality. I thought that earlier, but maybe I'm starting to think that maybe technology will remain just better technology, but it's always been better and better and better. But it will remain something we call upon when we need it, right? It will not be driving things. But this is...
I hope not.
No, but people are working that way. People are thinking that way. It will make decisions. I had Nandan on last episode. It will start making better decisions for us, and
but a better decision always. The core of a better decision is for what
and for who.
For who, in what perspective. What was the question?
That is for me. That is the bias. And when you say for who, that is an overweight in the data, right? That isn't something we say, I value this more than the other, right?
So let's take societies
so we can
as
never
a good
be
example.
Without that, but why do people think they can? Why does Elon Musk go out and say, I'll make Grokkapedia without bias, right? I'll make a bias-free article. Why do they say things like that?
So I suppose that if I go over in an engineering mindset, where we would say that the one great truth is math, like Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. What's the truth? What does it stand for? Stands for math. And in the world of math, something can be, there are equations and they are ultimately true, and things always have to fit beautifully together. So from that perspective, I can understand that thinking. There will always be a specific optimum given the parameters that you've inputted in a mathematical equation. And math is underlying for a lot of what we see around us here in this, everything around us. But when you have collected a lot of data on humans, and that is what you basically have when you have papers, when you have books, when you have the internet, that does not represent fluid dynamics necessarily, or not in large enough quantities to simulate the entire world around us. So although we are collecting lots of data on both water and weather and sun and global warming, we're still not at the level where it has the ultimate truth, and therefore it will always make the right decisions. And then comes also the right decisions for who. Let's say that the AI had to make the right decisions for planet Earth. Would it then necessarily want to have us as human beings here?
Would it understand, as you said before, it's always culturally biased also. Would it make a good world for Indians or Malaysians when it's made up by Western data on the internet?
Exactly. And also what we perceive in Denmark as being the perfect society, a good society, is very different, even for an American or an Indian.
My favorite picture is always, analogy is always and you know, sometimes you repeat yourself because in the only constant, I might be the only constant as the host, but I always say that Adam had to give name to things. That's his first job, even before Eve was made. So his first job was God saying, here's everything, I made everything. Tell me, how does it fit in your world, Adam?
But let's take that as a good example.
How does it fit?
So in Denmark, we have one word for snow, but we have an attachment country, or part of our country, Greenland. And thank you for still being part of Denmark, by the way, and our union. They have 16 words for snow. Why? Because they live in a space where they need that. That's just one example. Now you also have the bush people in the Kalahari Desert. They cannot recognize green. They don't have a word for green the way we have. And that just goes to show how incredibly different we communicate and our words are.
And language is not just language.
It is not. And so if LLMs are made of language, but only Western languages, it does not represent all of the perspectives in the world.
I think this, one of my friends made me aware of this once, and is that and for philosophers, German versus English, very close to each other, you know, very, very close linguistically, right?
Well,
but if you have worked a lot, you know, you have a lot of experience on your CV, but you also just tried some things. You got an experience, and what is it more? There are like 17 different things that experience can mean. That are in German, 17 different words, meaning that phenomenology and epistemology are much better described in German than in English, because the words just don't exist for it.
No.
That's interesting, right?
It is.
And for an LLM, you know.
It was so clear for me when I learned Dutch that there were so many things I wanted to express, especially in regard to emotions, and the words didn't exist in Dutch. And I sometimes found the Dutch to be a little cold or a little distant. And I just realized that in their language, those words were not there. And so every time we learn a new language, we learn a new perspective on both seeing the world and understanding the world. And we forget that when we look at large language models that are, again, made up of language.
Language is culture, right? And in Denmark we have a lot of words for you know, fishing, I think, and farming. Whereas in Dutch, I bet they have a lot on trade, and you know, and things move around like that, and it's just very. That's also why language is not just unambiguous that way. How do we? I want to touch back on the strategy thing, because a lot of people are also thinking that. I go to clients and they're like, we want something that make us work differently tomorrow. We don't just want to make efficiencies today. We also want to make the things that will be the new things we'll do tomorrow. Is it possible to jump from now to in 10 years? Because people think right now, we can see this will become R2D2. but can you just go to R2-D2 immediately? That might sound like a rhetorical question.
If I take the engineering perspective, I'll go, okay, I can try to reverse engineer what that path will look like to get there and what it would take. I mean, when you thought of sending rockets to the moon, nobody had ever gone to the moon before, but nevertheless, they could reverse engineer what would it take to send a rocket there. So can we do that kind of planning? Yes, if you have that clarity.
We didn't go from not flying to going to the moon, right? Just to be clear.
No, but I mean, we hadn't been flying on rockets. So.
Germany V2 rocket. Anyway, this is a murky part of history, by the way.
It could get, and we're not going to talk about Oppenheimer and how very powerful technologies can also have its downsides and its strengths. Nevertheless, can you make that plan? Yes. How can LLMs or AI accelerate our journey to this? What they can help us with is the scaffolding. They can help us get a better idea around our combining our ideas and using it for critical thinking and getting more clarity on exactly what we want to achieve and how we want to achieve it and how to prioritize it. So we shouldn't expect the AI to come up with these brilliant strategies for what we will be in 10 years, but we can expect them to help us gain the clarity and accelerate our critical thinking and the planning to get there.
Yeah, but it's like, I think Richard Rummel in Good Strategy by Strategy, one of my favorite quotes is, he says that, when things are unclear, when the future is unclear, things are moving fast, right? You need to make proximate steps, right? You're basically running in a fog, and you shouldn't do that. You should take very close steps close to home, because you need to make sure that you're doing the right things. But you don't agree with that?
So I'm an economist by trade, and so that will always color my way of seeing the world. I would always say, well, we make assumptions. So we make different scenarios. We do scenario analysis. There is a scenario analysis where we might end up in World War III. We hope not. There's also a scenario where things turn out differently. Maybe some files will take down Trump. Maybe we get a different president. Maybe we get closer collaboration again. But for each of those, we have to do the scenario analysis of what can happen and adjust all the parameters. And then we put in our strategy and we simulate where would we be landing in each of these and then figure out which of them are most viable. So
should we take more risk than we usually do then? That's what a lot of people are saying right now, right? Move fast, break things.
I don't think that because you're moving fast and you're breaking things that you're necessarily taking a lot of risks. You can take calculated risks. So do I think it's a good idea to vibe code your small idea or do a hackathon within a closed environment? I think that's a very good idea. Test it out, feel it out, see how it works. Do I think you should experiment with what you're doing for an entire company, all their products and all of their employees? No, I don't think you should do that. I think you should always take calculated risks. Take them small. You often say, shoot bullets, not cannonballs. That would be my approach.
It's a different thing to send out scouts, right? And to send out the entire army, right?
That's a very good analogy. Yeah.
So that also, leads me to, when a technology
and I
scales.
suppose some countries in this world are better at sending out scouts than others.
Yeah, but sometimes it's the entire strategy. Guerrilla warfare is basically.
Or what we call hybrid war today.
We can go very far in this analogy, and I think we should be careful. No, we're just thinking, how does guerrilla warfare fit
Maybe
with
you will get us down the track of some digital sovereignty.
But what it leads me to ask you, when a technology scales, so do the bugs and the unintended consequences. So now we talked about how ideation, how AI can make it. But what are we not focusing enough on right now? What are people missing when they're starting to do just a lot of experiments and want to move fast? And what do we need to speak a lot more? You mentioned digital maturity before, but that's more than just going to cloud as well. There's some. Jason Stanley said that. I asked him directly as well, right, about the attack surface, and he said it's exploding.
Yep.
Are we speaking enough about these things, Emilie? And what do you think? What should we be talking more about? What are the pitfalls that's scaling?
There are pitfalls in many different directions. If I had to stay close to home, a big pitfall for people is that they forget to train their own critical thinking. And they take whatever comes out as truth, which it isn't necessarily. If I had to take a bigger picture, I'd go back to the keynote that I had this summer for Experts Live in the Netherlands, where I called working with AI dancing with the devil, and lined up all of the tools that you have, whether it's guardrails or red teaming, or I was mentioning Microsoft Defender, that you can actually use to protect yourself against the threat of AI. That is just the threats that you have when you work internally with AI. Then comes all the threats from the outsides, the deep fakes, the voice fakes, the phishing. And yes, of course, when the criminals now can't just create phishing emails, but they can actually create, pictures and voice that sounds like your mother, they have a lot more powerful tools to do attacks. There was a great story of a deep fake on the CEO of Ferrari, where he was called up and asked to do a transfer of a lot of millions of euros, and it sounded like his CFO on the picture in the call. It looked like his CFO. Everything was matching, and still he felt like something was off. So he asked him one core question. He said, "Hey, what was that book that I recommended to you last week?" And then the scammer hung up. Now the answer to the question was that it was the Simon Sinek Start With Why. But here he just had that critical thinking that we can have as human nature to ask that one question to a scammer to stop him. But there is no doubt that we will see many more of these scams. Are scams the same as bugs? Again, I think that depends on your bugs.
To do all your captures. By the way, Emilie, what was the thing we spoke about? No, I will not. But the captures everywhere, right? Suddenly we start to perform it. I should ask you some things that only Emilie would know now as well, right?
So bugs that I see is that when you vibe code, you can get terrible code out. You can also get code out that has keys in it, and it shouldn't. Why does it do that? Well, it was chained on all of the code that you can find on GitHub, and unfortunately, all
also
of that.
The bad code.
Exactly, also the bad code. So those bugs you have to watch out for, and then there are all the kinds of ways that you can go in, and we have dark layers in LLMs. So you can work with an LLM and you can think that it's working perfectly, and then it turns out that there is one training layer, and when you go and ask questions about, it could be a political subject, it will turn completely radical and answer something else. So that's some hidden layers, also something you have to watch out for.
Hidden prompts, you remember those as well, where if you ask some gibberish, then you'd break all of its guardrails. Have you seen those as well? It's super weird.
There is come a lot of protection around prompt injections, so that you can't do that. But you could for sure do it, especially in the beginning with OpenAI. But we're getting a lot better. But then sometimes even the protection layers don't fit the context. I saw a very good example the other day where you had all the right protection layers for violence and harmful speech and sexual speech and all this, but it didn't consider that this specific LLM was giving advice in the financial sector. And the most important thing here was that it didn't give advice that was ungrounded or it wasn't authorized to give. So it also depends on the situation. And
I've been about there's applications that has financial AI chatbots as well, where they're like, our chatbot can't speak to you if you sell erotic toys. But that's also weird. It doesn't make any sense there. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But it had that guardrail because we can't speak about sex. It's dangerous. So it could help that company.
Funny, though.
It's super funny, but that's the quirks, right? Everywhere in this as well, right? That we try to guardrail and then we exclude use cases.
Yeah. And I think that goes back to showing how we as human beings, in the rules and the guidelines we create, whether laws in a country or guidelines within a company, are not always aligned and not always logical. And we're only seeing that LLMs are amplifying this to us, so we see it even clearer. And then, of course, there is the attack where you can go in and poison a model by giving it enough information that is completely different from what it's been trained for. So I could keep talking for hours about
convincing systems to give out data, because then you can convince them with language. That's if you have a chatbot on top of it.
In some instances, although it's getting far more sophisticated than it was just a year ago.
Yes.
But of course, when we add MCP to it, there is even more to consider. With an MCP, we're not just connecting one LLM with one tool one time at a time, but we're giving it access to an entire stack. If we weren't very careful about the rights that we gave to that agent and how to monitor it and being able to stop it, that of course can go and become a problem. Let's say it can go in and it can look at all of our health data, and it can look at all our financial data, and by the way, it can access all of our front ends, and it can also change our front ends. It could very easily start putting interesting data out on our websites that it shouldn't necessarily
go. Access as well, through the MCP. So interesting.
You really need to be very, very careful about limiting the rights of each agent to one little specific task if you want to control this.
That's what I spoke to Søren Friis Alexandersen from Business Central about. He said, it took them years to build the payables agent. It didn't take them 10 minutes, as some people would say, because they had to control all of these use cases, had to test it. It's not building the agent that's the problem. It was testing and calibrating it to an upstream and an downstream and all that, and testing. Unlimited capabilities, and I'm just going to say it, I've said it before, it requires or means unlimited testing.
It's a beautiful example. It was my biggest problem when we had to do the first testing on rack chats, because in the past, you could say, does the button work? Did the data come out in this format? Did it look the right way? But now there was a million answers, and I kept trying to explain to people that it's all the words that you put in as a question times all the data that we put in that it can answer. That is how many possibilities there is in the answering space. Now, we cannot create that many tests, so we have to decide on, creating some frames that will cover most of this and test on that. But it is a challenge.
Is it good enough now? Yeah.
And again, it will never be perfect. And for me, it's also a bit of a conundrum that people expect the LLM to be perfect, but nobody ever expects a human being to be perfect. Yet we trained LLMs on human beings' data.
But they're systems. But I think, the whole problem is people understand that usually, and I get that, because usually we build systems, we build engines, we build any kind of technology, anything we've ever built, we build it step by step. We take this thing, add this thing, we add blah, blah, blah. But here we sort of build a cloud of weights, right? That sort of does erratic things to some extent, and we can't. And that means that instead of building brick by brick what we wanted to do, we need to control it, and fence it in, to cut corners. We're sculpting from a big rock instead of building.
I would put it differently. We are adding so many different components that the possibility space of what can happen is exploding exponentially. And most human beings cannot hold all of those possibilities in their mind. And therefore, we cannot set rules or guides for everything that could possibly happen. And so instead, we have to build simple fences to keep it inside. But it doesn't fully match. We have to understand that the core prompt that you gave, that means the core line of thinking, the core perspective on what to do and how to see the world, that is what we have to work on and have great clarity on. And then, yes, we still have to do the fencing. But if that part is right, it won't go as much haywire or off track as it possibly could if you've given it a very short prompt. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. That's the first step, but that's just seems like sometimes the edge cases there's so many of them that we need to also. That's why I made the sculpture image, right? You take a big rock, a big model, and then you start chiseling off corners, right? Instead of building it up. That was just that's my.
It's a good analogy.
That's my way of understanding it and explaining it to people because they think technology is. We've never had technology like that, proliferated like that.
And what I do think is the beauty of that analogy is that if you think back to somebody like Michelangelo and you see how beautiful sculptures he's made and you realize that he had no technology whatsoever, that takes a brilliant mind to be able to look at a stone and then imagine something so detailed come out in lifelike sculpture and getting to that. Because if I had to create that as an engineering plan, that would be incredibly hard. Remembering that if I do it today with a laser on a rock, that laser has an image of what it should achieve or where it should be going. And he didn't have that. At best, he had a drawing.
And you have to have I like that, work of art requires a detailed vision. That's what I heard. And details, the detailed part is the interesting thing. It's not just saying, I want to make a man. I want to make a man that looks like this here and here. If you make a mistake, you can't erase it. You can't erase it on a rock.
But it takes a great deal of intelligence to not just have a vision of a building, but having a vision of every detail in that building that makes it into a piece of art.
Yeah.
And in my vocabulary, that is an incredibly detailed mental map that you need to have.
I want to move on to Serge Belongi in this last episode. He said that Gen AI models were about fluency, not understanding. Then it fits very neatly with what we just spoke about. So how important is it to understand the technology, to use it the right way? And how do you explain the technology to people?
How do I explain it? I mostly give them the explanations that I show them how LLMs work. So I show them how you actually take words and you take them into tokens and you turn them into embeddings, and these embeddings become vectors that we can see in a 3-dimensional space. And then we start calculating how far in between is there between the vectors, and thus what must be the most likely next step. And then I explain.
Do you explain it that way to everyone?
I show them that visually in order for them to grasp the idea.
Yeah.
And then explaining to them that, we just started with, of course, attention's all you need and the BERT models, and just trying to improve search. And search was just about, instead of understanding each word, understanding the full meaning of the sentence, and thus what must be the most likely thing you were looking for. And then going from there to expanding the space of understanding to the huge context windows that we have today, where you can add in a whole book chapter, and then it can tell you what would most likely be the next chapter of the book. But then I also showed them that just one change of words can completely change the output that you get. The simple one to understand for people is, what is a co-pilot? And of course, you look at the internet, most of the resources you'll find will explain that it's a pilot that helps as a second pilot to steer the plane. Today we have Microsoft Copilot. You add that word in and you will get a different kind of understanding of what that means, because that's a digital assistant that can help you optimize your daily work. So just changing one word can completely change what you get out. So I explain large language models built on language, and the reason why they can understand more of the modalities that we have, like speech and sound, seeing, visually, imaging, is because we've added on narrow AI simply as components on top, and you can translate between the narrow AI and the LLMs with tokens. But in essence, the logic it's working on is just language.
Yeah.
And then calculating the probability of what's coming next. So if I ask something like, what is the capital of France? Most likely answer is Paris. There could also be other right answers in a different context. It could be romantic, it could be beautiful, it could be dense, a lot of other things.
That's also what Sarge means with fluency, right? Isn't it?
Yes, so it's fluency language, but then I always explain to them that language and grammar is a very different logic than math. And for that reason, LLMs naturally are very poor at math and logical reasoning that is similar to math. And so we have to add a code interpreter layer on top to make it be able to do code, logic, reasoning, math, because it's not enabled naturally. Then there is the examples of making it play very different roles, taking very different perspectives on the world, to ensure that they understand that an LLM doesn't naturally have a personality or an opinion. They are there to create content for you, and they're also there to create as much engagement as possible. Most of the time when we pay for LLMs, we pay per token, and so the more you converse with them, the more token use there is, and the more money the people behind the LLMs are making. That's how I try to explain LLMs to people, and I hope that they understand it.
But the thing is that and I think that's a very, very good technical explanation. But does it really answer the questions that other people are having questions, and I'm also answering them all the time? Is that how human are they? The anthropomorphization of these models as well, right? And that's also what Serge was trying to answer when he said they're about fluency, not understanding. There's a difference here, right? You're saying as well. Then you add code interpreter, then you add data, and we ground them in different things all the time, so they understand a bit more, right? Than they don't do, because they're just fluency models basically. Yeah. But I think there was a beautiful example in one of your other podcasts where they say they mirror you back, but they're a mirror that doesn't see you. And I think it's a very good description for a human being. It's a non-technical
good description for humans.
I saw your AI girlfriend the other day, a picture of your nice AI girlfriend, and then your AI girlfriend without the makeup, and then it was just server rack. I just loved. I thought that meme was just perfect. So,
but on that note, I got so depressed the other day. I saw that in Japan there was a young woman who had divorced her fiance and married her AI boyfriend, and it made me feel dismal. I thought how terribly sad you'd actually managed to find another human being that loved you and wanted to spend the rest of their life with you, with your imperfections, his imperfections, but instead you chose to have a mirror. And it makes me feel like we're going towards a very narcissistic society.
It's a Snow White story, isn't it?
I think it's more of like a
That's also narcissistic.
The
stepmother speaking to the mirror.
With the mirror, who in the world is the most beautiful? Quite right. But I was thinking more of Narcissus and how what he wants is just a mirror back of himself and not the great love of Echo. Yeah. And she fades away.
It's a terribly beautiful story.
It is. And think about the fact that the Greeks understood this more than 2,400 years ago. Yeah. And today, human beings are still making those mistakes. But now AI is our mirror. I
also like the distinguishing between the signifier and the signified, because I think the AI models are signifiers, right? They can tell about things, but they cannot be the thing. There's a different, we speak about table, there's some words for table, but there's also the table itself, the signified thing. And
it can make an image of the table for you.
Yeah, and it's very platonic as well, right? But that distinction, the AI models are just immensely good at reproducing this, the mirror world, right? And the metaverse or whatever, which we can say all of this. But the real thing, right? And if that Japanese woman does not need a hug anymore, it's just she is flesh, right?
She is, but it takes a lot of
human coil.
But the interesting thing is that LLMs and social media have become so good at triggering our brain and our basic needs for understanding, belonging, interacting, that we're stuck on these phones. And it takes a large amount of consciousness to step back and say, hey, I don't want to be tricked by whether social media or LLMs into this mirror world. I want to live in the real world with real tables and real people and real learning that comes from human interaction.
Yeah, we've been reinforced all the time by also in social media, the algorithm reinforcing our biases as well. And what we want to see, we'll see more of that.
And it's a lot easier because if everything I believe in the way I see the world is true and I get reinforced in that, there's no friction.
Yeah.
When I go back and have to deal with whether it's your wife or your colleagues or just your neighbor, they will never see the world the same way that you do because they've had different experiences. And in that, there is a lot of friction. And that makes human existing both interesting and a learning journey and also terribly cumbersome at time.
Exactly. So I think Carl Friston said it, right? That if it takes more than 5 minutes to understand, it's probably worth your time. While also on the podcast saying that that the social media and are disease in the brain, because you never do that anymore. You don't take the friction. The friction is seeing things that you don't agree with sometimes, having uncomfortable discussions, having different perspectives, taking something that you had to go over 5 times. As we spoke about last time, that I did some quantum physics audiobooks at one point. I had sometimes you just had to go over it again because I wanted to understand, right? Yeah. But if I just said, I don't understand it, it's not for me. I see my kids sometimes doing that, and that's where I get the most, dad. I become very much a dad. I think they're doing it also to provoke me, but I become very much a dad saying, you have to study the things that are hard. I want to say,
So I'm going to take the opposite view on that one. I believe that in some instances we've been taught too much to take the hard road, and the hard road doesn't spark your brain. If it doesn't spark your brain, then you're not going to create new neurons.
Proximate objectives has to be something you can relate to.
Somehow you have to be able to build that bridge between where you are and then where they are at, and that will keep you learning. So one of my former leaders, he said, stop doing what's hard and start doing things that give you energy and that you think is fun. And I think it's important to have that fun part into learning, that sometimes we're not trying to reach something specific. Sometimes we're just playing with it to learn and to understand and to that way grasp a whole new content. Should we then still try to understand people who see the world very different from us? Yes, that will enrich our perspective and our understanding of the world. But sometimes I want people to remember that just 100 years ago, most of the Danes had never traveled abroad. The only people they ever met lived within a vicinity of 20 to 30 kilometers. So their understanding of the world was very similar. It wasn't very different. And it was less than 1% who were traveling around, who were philosophers, who were understanding, who were seeing different countries. So that was the few unique. And today we're expecting the majority of the world to actually be able to grasp and hold space for different cultures, different languages, different perspectives, because we come into contact with them every day. I go to work today in a Danish company, and I'll work with people from 50 different countries. You expect that doesn't create friction? We're still human beings.
Also increase the complexity, right?
Absolutely. And also when we all communicate in English, but all of us are translating from our native language into English. So when we speak English, we will again not have the full same understanding of the words. So should you do things that expands your horizon? Absolutely. But just don't forget how far people have come. In the 16th century, learning multiplication was done at university.
So we're not simplifying the world. We're not simplifying the world. But I think every time some hype technology comes out, people think this will simplify how we do things, or simplify our communication with our customers, or simplify this or that or that.
There's a big difference between faster and simplifying.
Yeah. But what it seems like to me right now is we're adding complexity to get higher outcomes.
LLMs are more complex. Setting it up in a perfect way and a secure way is highly complex. Can it do some tasks faster? Yes, it can.
Yes, it can. Exactly. So we get more, but there's a trade-off.
Yeah. And I think if we look at somebody like Schumpeter and the innovation waves, this friction has happened in every innovation wave. That when you went from just making things by hand to industrialization, was it easier and less complex to make socks by hand than having steam engines do it? Absolutely. But you could do it a lot faster. Was it simpler to go on your horse from A to B than driving in a motorized car or on a railroad? Yes, it was. Nevertheless, you could do it faster. So with each of the innovation waves, we gain value by being able to do things faster and more efficiently, but the world becomes more complex. And
I also think that when we do, now AI can help you write copy for your marketing campaign, or it can give you a video for your Hollywood movie. But that doesn't mean that every Hollywood movie will be an AI-generated one. It just means that will add pressure to how you make your other movies. You will have to make sure it looks better than what anyone can make at home, because Hollywood will be pressured by that. And the same way, you will not need to make 100 copy ideas with generative AI. You still just need the one good one that would stand out against all the others who are also using Gen AI.
And I would go back to, it's not about generating 100 copy ideas. It's about you knowing exactly what kind of copy you need for that customer, for that product in that market. Because you know that, you can write the great prompt that will give you that in 3 attempts.
And against the competition. That's also why it's difficult for me to say that people will say, I want to go to what I can see we will be in 10 years. Because, everyone has this power right now. This is a commoditized technology. It's not, no one will win from it, but you will lose from it, I like to say, right? You'll lose if you don't do it. But winning is difficult because everyone will be having the same technology. It's not a differentiator. Your digital maturity might be, I think, see you're thinking here. But so I'm trying to say what you will be saying in a second. I'm trying to grasp what is Emilie thinking. But you get my point, right? That it is something, and it's like with the iPhone. No one can get a better iPhone than anyone else. It's just democratized that way. So where I want to go with that is just to say that even though you can see I can make an AI marketing agent bot there in the future that could fix all of my marketing. Well, if all of your competitors do that, you will not have an advantage. And this, it will be worthless. In essence, when everyone has it, it is also worthless. It's not a differentiator. Yeah, and that's the super interesting thing, right? It's an added complexity to give us some high output as a society. So where do we go? On a personal level, I feel that LLMs have given me a bit of an existential crisis.
Because I realized that with everything I know and all the tools I have, I could pretty much build anything. So why am I still working for a company? If you ask me to build an app, we can do that within an hour. You ask me to build a system, we can do that within an hour. So I can do so many of these things. Why am I not becoming a serial entrepreneur? The sad truth that I don't like to admit to myself, but I'm coming to terms with, is that the differentiator is that you really have to want something and you have to have clarity on that goal and the passion to push there. And that's the differentiator, because all the tools are available to all of us. But the brands that we see utilizing this the best and winning are the ones who truly have their heart in what they're doing and express that and can amplify that 10x by using AI.
And relationships and trust and all that, that's also still a key differentiator. That's what it used to be, but even more maybe when everyone can do anything. I think SAP's messaging on AI is really interesting. They're more secure, compliant, everything you buy SAP for, right? Not saying we break things fast. They don't say that.
No, that would be very not German.
And not SAP like, right? You get
Yeah. If I had to make it very relatable, I'd say, look at our LinkedIn inbox. I have never had so many messages as I have today.
No.
I have to show it to my husband sometimes to give him a grasp of, like, I have 200-300 unopened messages. Why? Because everybody out there is using an LLM to send messages to me. Do I open them? No. Why? I don't trust them. I don't know them. And they didn't know me, so why would I?
Who was it said that you just use AI to answer all your messages as well? Like, stop it, stop.
I'm going to stop you right there.
Exactly.
Because what I noticed is the faster you answer, the more you get back. So the most efficient thing in this world is not to choose the right thing to do, but to sometimes choose what not to do.
What annoys me so much is that whenever people are on LinkedIn and all the social media, is that whenever they use these AI, they always have these, it's not A, it's B, it's not A, it's not, and they use these rhetorical structures constantly that lure me into an argument that has in the end no edge, because it's been smothered into bias regurgitations. And I have a hard time with that. I use that existential crisis, because I like AI. I advocate for using it to increase productivity and automation, all that. But I used to write poetry when I was young, and I studied history. I'm a good writer, and I know my writing. I can see the arguments. I feel I see all the patterns. People are like, oh, this is good text. No, it's crappy text, and I can see that it's AI. There's no edge, and I hate it with every piece of my bones. By body, I really do, and I have a hard time with that right now.
So I fully understand you. I'm still going to take the counter argument. The beauty of edge communications is that it asks us to question ourselves and how we see the world. To most people, that's uncomfortable. It creates psychological dissonance, creates friction. So a fun example is when you start working in corporate, you learn to talk corporate. Some call it corporate bullshit. The essence of corporate bullshit is that you do say things, but you definitely say it without edge. And LLMs are wonderful at helping you with exactly that.
I didn't say corporate emails.
And so, but on LinkedIn, there is a difference. You can choose to be an influencer that says things that are provocative. Dan Rose from Todd.ai is a good example. Søren Søndergaard. And they choose to be out there on the edge very much themselves and saying things that provoke people, and they can create a lot of comments. But if you don't want to create friction, you just want to make people aware of something happening, something that's interesting. You want to engage them, but you don't want to push them away. LLMs can, to some extent, help you with that communications. And here we have to also remember that LinkedIn weren't necessarily made to create new philosophy or paradigm shifts or make us see the world in a whole new way, or for political discussions. Yes, you can do it, but most of the people communicating on LinkedIn are driving attention to some sort of subject, and they don't necessarily want to provoke. And for that, LLMs can be just fine. But notice what I'm calling it, just fine.
Yeah.
Not extraordinary.
No.
Not new thinking.
Not even edgy. But that's it's also why I actually find the podcast even more important than I did when I started it. Because having the possibility to meet up with minds like you and speak and probe and through an hour-long conversation, maybe get you somewhere you didn't expect to be, and see what happens there in those rooms. I can make a podcast with an AI bot right today, and I wouldn't do that.
So I've made plenty. For entertainment, if I sometimes have to learn something that I think is slightly boring, I use Speechify and I turn it into podcast. They're always boring, and it doesn't spark my mind the way meeting other people does. And so I don't spend hours talking with an LLM, but I can ask the LLM to give me some critical feedback on how I write, how I see the world, or how I have planned something out. And they can do that more efficiently than any of the people I know around me.
Yeah.
But I won't. I will not be provoked into changing my perspective or becoming somebody else.
No, you have to remember that that's something we do in an interaction, and we do it also with people who are imperfect, edgy. I'm very much starting to like this organic view of humans, because I feel like we have this very weird bias creature now that we also have to compete with and discuss with, right? So, Emilie, you're a definite leader in the Danish AI space. I'm just saying that, period. So, what will we be speaking about in 5 years?
The question is, even if we have Agi, if we will be speaking about it, or if we will have integrated the whole idea of working with AI to such an extent that, let's take again, Andrej Karpathy's example of it becoming our operating system, that we take it for granted. And so we no longer speak of it because it's such an integrated part of our everyday use, everyday work, everyday habits, the same way that we no longer talk about the iPhone or really our laptops because it's something we do and we work with it every day. So instead, I'd focus on what's happening this week. We have the International Climate Conference happening in the middle of the rainforest in Brazil. And in one way, you could hope that we're talking more about increasing biodiversification, sustainability, and fighting global warming. In an ideal world, we don't have to talk about it because we already resolved it, but probably not. So I hope that we're talking more about the real problems and how to use technology, whether it's AI or Agi, call it what you want, to solve the real problems in the world and have the difficult conversations.
So not just AI that can fix, or AGI or ASI or whatever that can maybe go and do some of your artwork, but actually start doing the dishes and start fixing climate change, right? They've been saying that for a couple of years. Oh, it will fix climate change, but we're not really there yet.
No, because what's the value stream on fixing climate change?
Yeah.
You will sell more products from the problems that arises from global warming than necessarily solving global warming. That's a bit of a conundrum.
Yes. And I will let that hang, because that can extrapolate to so many different things and questions. And I could ask the same about AI and IT and all. But we won't answer that here. Just let's leave that, if you agree.
So I'm hoping our focus will be on solving real problems and how we as human beings become conscious enough to have the space to actually focus on that and focus on what is really important for us, and not just hype technology and money. That's my hope for the future.
Purpose and substance.
Yes.
That's what I'm hearing. Love it. Emilie, this has been a really, really great conversation, and a long one. So I'm really, really happy with that. And I think it's been awesome to have you here on The Only Constant. And we're not exactly done yet. I have one final question for you. Right. And I hope you're ready for that one. And I know you're prepared a little bit for it as well. So no pressure, but a lot of pressure. This is serious.
Very serious. Yeah.
Are you ready for it?
I hope so. As ready as I'll ever get.
Great. So, Emilie, what is the only constant?
So for me, I of course have to say that it's change. Because no matter how I step into this world, it will never be the same as it was an hour ago, a minute ago, or yesterday. The air changes, the building changes, the weather changes. And so there is no way that there's not change. But change is also the essence of why we as human beings have to develop to become more conscious. If everything was Groundhog Day and we were doing the same thing over and over again, we could optimize. We could find a habit and a pattern that would fit perfectly to that, and there would be no friction. But because everything changes, people changes, technology changes, political systems changes, even our perspective changes, we have to continually adapt and learn and become more conscious of who we are in interacting with all of these changes. And the faster that it happens, the more we have to increase our speeds of continual improvement and continual learning. If that wasn't there, I wonder why we as conscious human beings are here. So I do believe that we're here to learn and to expand. And so it is change. And change gives us the foundation for expanding ourselves through our consciousness, our presence, our awareness, our critical thinking, and thereby also our learning.
That's a great answer and a great perspective on change is the only constant. And always reminds me of Heraclitus saying that it's not just that the river changes, it's that the river has to change to stay the river. So we need to be curious. We need to have an adaptive mindset to stay who we are and stay relevant, right?
I believe that's why we have podcasts like this and why we live.
And on that note, I'd love to say thank you so much, Emilie Lundblad, for being here on The Only Constant. It's been an honor and a pleasure and a privilege and an inspiring engagement. Thank you.
You're most welcome. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening. If you liked this episode, share it with a friend or a colleague.